this video, we're going to talk about organization design. It can be a daunting topic, and I hope to make some sense of it today. That's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR ShopTalk. On the show, you get expert insight into anything that has to do with HR. Please subscribe to the show or podcast to keep learning from my guests. Today, my guest is Len Nanjad. Len, as far as I can tell, has a thing, and that thing is organization design. I came across him when I was at a conference and went to his presentation on the topic. Hi, Len, how are you?
Hi, Andrea. I'm fantastic. Great to see you.
Great, you too. And let us make some sense of the mystery. All right, so I'm just going to dive right in. So what is organization design? And just humor me, why does it matter?
Fantastic. I think I come at organization design as the way we put together work for people to get things done together.
Okay.
It's also the art and science of delegation. So organization actually happens the minute somebody has some work that they want to give to someone else to do on their behalf. So that's the basic of what it is, right? But the wording, the structure, the idea of, all of these common phrases that you hear. So organization design is really just lines and boxes. Well, that's a component. That's a component. That's what we would call structure, and the boxes being roles or positions or groups of accountability, and the lines being the relationships between them in terms of working authority or reporting structure, if you will. But design is bigger than just that structure piece. It also contains the management practices which helps that structure work most effectively. So what do we do as management in order for those relationships between the boxes to work effectively? What do we do as managers to make sure that what's happening in the boxes happens effectively as well? So it's not just the design of the structure or the jobs and the relationships. It's also the design of the work of managing that structure itself, right? So the analogy that I typically use with this is kind of switching your vehicle design. If you were driving a Ford pickup truck, would you drive it the same as if you were driving your Maserati? Both are vehicles, both have four wheels, both have an accelerator and a brake and a transmission and a steering wheel. So all the tools are the same, but would you drive them differently down the very same road? And chances are you wouldn't, because they're designed to perform differently for different reasons, for different fit for purpose. So it's the same with an organizational design. If you restructure for better performance, for better strategy delivery, for more innovation, for more accountability, just having the design isn't enough. You've got to manage within that design a little bit differently to get that expected performance for purpose. So that's why I call it organizational design, as much more broad than just structure.
You were talking about organization as what happens. It's the boxes and what's happening, but it's also how you're managing the boxes.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, what is organization design with respect to managing the boxes?
Yeah. So there's probably three major components to that if you were to translate it into what HR speak, let's say. So one component is talent management, right? So I've got this box designed. Is there a human being that actually can do that work? Right? Okay. So what does that translate into? Well, that translates into, making sure that these accountabilities are based on capabilities and competencies, and then those capabilities and competencies are what you use to select someone into that role. Those capabilities and competencies and the ability to deliver on those accountabilities are what you use to develop someone in that role or manage performance in that role, right? So we've got, selection, performance management, and essentially growth and development, talent management. So that's kind of the third component of org design as well.
And so those, I didn't ever realize that those were parts of org design.
Well, they are in my book.
Okay.
I'd say it that way
Okay.
because you would say, oh, well, just as long as we get the structure, we're okay. And I'm like, well, as long as you have the structure, you have something that creates roles and creates accountability.
Okay.
And then what often happens is, okay, well, now we need work to be done around role clarity.
Right.
And that's another way of thinking about these management practices is another component of management practices is role clarity, right? So what are these things that we do to make sure that the role is clear to me, clear to my boss, and clear to my peers, and clear to the team that I lead, right? That's a lot of going around, making sure everybody knows what you're accountable for and what they're accountable for. But that's what you need for role clarity. And there's some management practices around that. And some are very, very prescriptive, saying, okay, well, we do things like skip level management. We have a clear set of decision rights. Is it veto right or is it approval right? Like these kinds of things help clarify where I have accountability and my balance of authority with that, right? So even the conversation around decision rights can be part of an organizational structure and design conversation. So that's why it's not as simple as, okay, here's the job.
Boxes in hierarchy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and in some cases, I suppose it's not hierarchy. Anyhow.
Actually.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Could I pick up on that comment?
For sure you can.
Okay. I do hold a fairly convicted point of view that it is about hierarchy, actually. And it's about hierarchy based on the nature of the work that you're doing itself, right? And we can all find a very common pattern in the world that there's doing the work, then there's managing the people that are doing the work, and then there's managing the people that manage the people that do the work.
Yeah.
And then there's managing at probably yet another level. And each of one of these layers of management, if you will, are doing work at a certain level of complexity of that work. And that nature of hierarchy is a naturally occurring human pattern of getting work done. So whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, you're always operating in a hierarchy.
I was thinking when I made that comment, it was a sort of throwaway thing, I was thinking about matrices or matrices and stuff like that as maybe not a strict hierarchy.
Well, again, it's what does strict mean? Like hierarchy is a set of ways of getting work done. It's not necessarily a design rule. It's a design principle, right? It's like gravity, right? These complexities of work are happening naturally whether you design for it or not. If you design a very formalized hierarchy, what you're actually creating is bureaucracy. And those bureaucracy are the rules by which layers of management are allowed to interact with each other. That's actually not hierarchy. Hierarchy is how the work gets layered out and delegated out. The rules that you apply to allow that to happen can be bureaucratic or non-bureaucratic. And that's why I say organization design is also about your management practices, because bureaucracy is about management practice, not structure.
So this all kind of just drives at my next question which is, what is the goal of organization design?
Oh, that's a great question because it can go very philosophically. Let me start very tangibly and I'll go to the philosophy of it.
Okay.
So the primary goal of organizational design is productivity. So we just need to get as much work as we can done with as little effort and as little time as possible. So the better aligned your human system of work is with your processes and with your strategy, the more productive your people can be, period. Okay. Right? Okay. That's how many people would understand it.
Okay.
When I get philosophical about it is that when you design for natural human systems using some of these naturally occurring principles that I alluded to, you're designing for a healthy human system. And taken to the extreme, the purpose of good organizational design is to save lives.
That's quite an extreme.
Yeah. And that's actually what drives me, right? The better we can design systems of work that we're in, the more healthy a work environment we are in, and the less stressful those environments are, the more engaging they are. And we get this double benefit of being more productive and healthier and less stressful, therefore improving our health. And so I look for better alignment of organizations as a way of improving the human condition.
So how do you know when doing a reorg is the wrong tool for the situation?
Oh, great question. So there's two ways for me to address this question. There's kind of when people call me, and then what I notice. What I notice is when I can understand that it's probably a good time for a reorg or that you need a reorg. But there are there's some rationale for a reorg that are not necessarily the best reasons for it, I would say. So if you want to get rid of somebody because of poor performance, because of they've just been there too long, or they're an impediment to a change that you want to make, and you're saying, well, the best way to get rid of them, probably the only way to get rid of them within a legal or severance requirement is if we just reorged them out of the organization, then that would be a good reason for a reorg. That's probably not a good reason for a reorg. Another sign, or that an org design is a wrong tool for a problem, is that you're noticing a skill gap. Okay. You don't have the capabilities to develop structure. Well, is that a accountability and roles and structure problem, or is it really is it really a different problem? Is it around your learning and development, or is it around your selection? Right.
Like, can I give you an example in that regard?
Please.
Like something like you need someone who's got blockchain experience and your organization doesn't have that. So let's create a blockchain department. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that that we have the answer. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? The art of organization design is actually doing the analysis to figure that out. Right?
Okay.
Is that a core activity to your strategy? Is it a part of your unique value proposition of what you deliver? Mm-hmm. Therefore, should I have it in-house as a protected capability, or can I outsource it in some way as a open market capability to support my business? Right, and that's a common question we get asked all the time. Should we buy it? Should we build it? Should we rent it? And the answer is, well, what are you trying to achieve?
So what are the symptoms of bad org design?
I'll just jump off of that and saying, I don't know if I like to call it bad org design.
Okay.
I like to think about it as alignment or misalignments or better alignments. Okay. And there's a horizontal alignment, which means how you group the work into working units. Mm-hmm. And there's a vertical alignment, which is how you layer the work in terms of layers of management and layers of management accountability. Okay. And so looking at it from that perspective of horizontal and vertical alignment, the symptoms you can experience are decision-making is slow. We don't have the right people in the right meetings at the right time. Either there's too few of the right people or too many people in a meeting for it to be effective. We have micromanagement occurring in certain areas where a manager is really just doing a spell check on documents to move it on to before a decision can be made, and the manager is actually not the decision maker. It's something further up the line. So is that management position really adding value? You can experience teams having low accountability, sort of pointing in all directions, going, well, I thought that was you. I thought that was you. You can have a misbalance of workload. There are teams that are overloaded and teams sitting around twiddling their thumbs. How is that possible? Right. So you've got some poor design there at play. You can also have the gap situation, right? Which is you're experiencing someone who's being asked to do something and they never can seem to get it right, even though you know they're very capable and strong at what they're doing, but they don't never seem to get their work done right. It has to be reworked. Decisions have to be revisited. And the manager can be quite noble in their intent to say, well, like, this person's really struggling. I have to help them and coach them and help them get their work done. But it takes the manager away from their primary work. Experiencing that kind of thing is also an indication of a misalignment in your design. So those are a few examples.
But I'm sure, me and the audience out there, we have all seen those. And it's really interesting to think about it in the context of org design, as opposed to, in that last example you were given, is this, able employee, but they're just not in the right situation. It's just not set up well.
Yeah. And that just sort of takes me to this place of when people call me. Typically people will say, well, we're having some trouble, so we did some management development and helped people get better at being better managers with some time management and personal accountability management or whatever. And that didn't seem to work. We didn't get better at making decisions. We didn't get faster at serving our customers. We didn't get more efficient. And the management engagement, employee engagement was good. And we were actually not more productive. Well, so then it must be the team. So then let's do some team dynamics development and some team building and some team productivity and team role enhancement and team clarity. And you do that, and that didn't work either. And then you try something else, whether it be training, whether it be skill development, whether it be performance management, and even that doesn't work. Well, when those things don't work, you pretty much know it's your system. And that's when I get called. It's like, well, if all those other things have failed, then you've pretty much eliminated the root cause, which is the design of your work system itself.
If you found this stimulating, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. Have you seen an instance of dreadful organization design? And I know Len calls it misaligned organization design. What were the symptoms that you saw? I really actually want to know. So tell the story in the comment section. This has been super fascinating so far. But what are the 3 to 4 key principles of organization design?
Yeah, so there's probably a few that I've already alluded to in my earlier comments that go around, because that's probably the first principle of principles. You should always start with a set of principles. Right?
Are they the same principles all the time?
Well, not necessarily. There are many schools of thought of what the key principles of organizational design are, but my point would be to start with one of them. Right?
Okay.
Have some principles that guide your organizational design. So what do we mean by that? It's a deep and abiding guide to the way you're going to think about it, the approach that you're going to use, the mindset in the organizational design. So I've talked about a little bit about that one. So one principle I use in organizational design is that it's about alignment. It's about vertical alignment and horizontal alignment. So we will do the analysis on both those levels. So then we break down that analysis into further principles. So what's the principle of vertical alignment we should use? And there's a concept called span of control, which is how many people is it most reasonable for a position to report to? There's not a hard, fast rule.
I was hoping you were going to give us a hard and fast number. Darn.
Right. But there is a human limit. So if you just start with a guideline that says, well, there's commonly a human limit of somewhere between 7 to 10 reports. So if we can keep that in mind, that's probably a good guideline for span of control. But really, the next principle, which guides both horizontal and vertical alignment, is the principle of complexity, or level of complexity of work.
Okay.
So complexity refers to the number of variables that you would manage, the interdependence of those variables. So if you change one variable, does it change another variable? How dynamic those variables are in terms of the speed at which they change and the volatility at which they change at. It related to interconnectedness is sort of the full interconnectedness of the variables in your control with the variables that are out of your control. If you think about all of that as complexity, then you can actually clarify the complexity of work that's being done. And the complexity of work in the observations and in theories out there, including requisite organization, it actually layers itself quite normally, quite repetitively, quite predictively into a set of layers of complexity, or what we call levels of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use those levels of complexity to map to layers of management.
So this is a bit of a pet question. What are your thoughts around designing? You've got some up and comer, you're trying to develop them, you think they're a future leader and they need opportunity. So let's design a department for them. What do you think about that?
I guess for the sake of being provocative, I would say that's absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Okay, tell us why.
I don't necessarily advise to design work for a person, but I shouldn't say design work. You can design work for a person.
Mm-hmm.
You can design a role for a person. I do advocate for that. However, it has to fit within your organizational system. So an organizational design, a structure, it's not really a good design principle to be designing for the people in the system first. You should be designing for the work that needs to get done.
Yeah.
And once you've designed for the work that needs to get done, then you look at mapping talent to positions or roles for that work to get done. Now, where we get into the trap of this is the single worst piece of technology that's hampered us for the past 6 years, which is called the job description. The challenge with the job description is that it comes out of bureaucracy and hasn't really kept up with our world of fluid accountabilities and being able to shift accountabilities between, let's say, jobs or positions in a more meaningful way for individual skill development and that sort of stuff. So this is why we feel kind of like, cross-training happens when one person learns another person's job. Well, yeah, but they're learning specific parts of that job. They're not learning the whole job. So what we're really doing is just being more fluid about cross-assigning accountabilities. But we're stuck because our work administrative systems are based on the concept of a job description. And that's systemic because, if you're in a unionized environment, everything is based on the job description.
Absolutely.
And if you're in a non-unionized environment, all your compensation is based on a job description and a job level, right? So these are systemic factors that actually hinder us by design from having more fluid assignment of accountability, which can actually fit to the person. This is why I say it's provocative to say, well, you shouldn't design for a person, you should design for the work at hand. If you have a system that's able to assign accountability more fluidly, and basically not hampered by the static job description, then you can design for work and you can be fluid in assigning that work all across the system.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, closing thoughts here. And then maybe it's another pet question. Why does it feel like companies are reorging so often?
Because they are.
Is it necessary?
Yes. As we move into an increasingly human and dynamic world from what was a mechanistic and mechanically designed and shaped world, systems of accountability are dynamic. Strategies change more often to the point where strategies are emergent, right? Many leaders are like, I don't believe in strategic planning. I believe in strategic facilitation. I know we have to have a strategy, but we have to revisit it it used to be 3 years now, or 3 to 5 years. Now it's every year. Now for some, it's every quarter. For some, it's every month. So that just the dynamic nature of strategy changes the dynamic nature of organizational alignment with your strategy. So reorg is not a static thing anymore. Your reorg is a continuous process within your organization. It's an organizational capability that you have to be flowing with dynamic environments, with human environments. You're going to see it go into two extremes. One is we don't reorg at all because we don't need to, because we actually have a fluid system. Everything's emerging.
Right.
So it feels like we're not reorging because people are just doing what they're doing, and they're moving, and they're gaining experience, and they're going into more complex work. The other extreme is, yeah, we're reorging every day now because we're hampered by these static systems that we have to do systemic changes with. And so we actually have a department in our HR department or whatever that's basically doing continuous organizational redesign every day, because we have to move roles here, add roles there, remove roles here. And it's just it's a department that's, or a group or a team, a function of its own that is doing this kind of thing.
All right. Thanks, Len. That was just so fascinating, and to some degree, a bit unexpectedly so. I did an episode on job design that I think was a little bit more up Len's alley and isn't what you expect. That link is right here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.